Hey everybody. Well, I've always been fascinated by mysteries of the unexplained ever since I was little. I just always been drawn to things that I couldn't quite understand, or there wasn't really an explanation for. Weird things, mysterious things, strange things, uh, and I got this book here, and it's loaded with this type of stuff, this type of information. This book is near and dear to me. It's called Mysteries of the Unexplained. And I love this book, and I've had it for a long time, and I'm going to tell you about it. I got a pipe here. I'm going to get it going. Little Missouri Meerschaum. This is called the Diplomat. Inside, some Mixture 79. It's good. Mixture 79 is good stuff. So when I was little, used to go to my grandparents' house on Sundays. They lived about an hour away. The town they lived in was about an hour away from my house, and so on Sundays we would take a day trip over to their house and spend the day with them. And I always liked to go. My grandfather had a big bookshelf in the living room, and I would always go to that bookshelf and scan through his books and find this one and always pull this book out. He had a lot of other great books, just awesome books on awesome subjects, but I would always go for this one and pull it out and just spend the whole afternoon. I would get this book and I would plop down on his big couch and spend the whole afternoon reading it and getting lost in this book and just being so intrigued and caught up in what I was reading. And I would always be sad at the end of the day when we would have to leave and I'd have to put this book up, because this book, the way it's set up, it's got a lot of different sections with different articles, a lot of small articles, and sort of you just kind of go through them. And I had never really read it all. I would just read a little bit that day while I was there, and I'd have to put it up. And so one day we went there, and he said, "Hey, you know that book that you always read when you come over here?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, you can have it." And it meant so much to me, and I loved this book. And I had never been able to just sit down and read it like I wanted to, because I was always sort of had that time restraint of, well, we will be leaving at the end of the day, and so I had to put it up. And so I got to take it home, and I just devoured it, and I've read it several times since then, cover to cover. And I always feel like I find a new interesting nugget in here that I can just chew over and over in my mind and get lost in. Wow, how is that? Why is that? Why can't we explain that? And I love it so much. And so I'm gonna read some of it, and I'm honored to share it with you. So it's put out by Reader's Digest. The copyright on it is 1982, Reader's Digest Association. And it's set up in different sections, and this is going to be a series because this book is so rich with information that I'm just going to have to break it down. And so what I'll do is I'll go through each section and I'll read a couple of nuggets from each section. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first section, and that is Prophecies. A lot of times when you think about prophecy, you think about maybe way back in the day with a king and his court. They used to look to prophets to help them solve problems or help them figure things that they didn't understand out. And the two that I have picked are not really from that long ago. They're more sort of modern takes on prophecies. And the first one I picked happens to be about a fellow pot smoker of ours named Mark Twain. This is called Mark Twain's Dream, and each article is cited as to where they got their information, so I will also read that to you as well. In the late 1850s, young Mark Twain and his brother Henry worked together on the riverboats then plying the Mississippi between St. Louis and New Orleans. One night, during a stay at his sister's house in St. Louis, Twain had an unusually vivid dream. In it, he saw his brother's corpse lying in a metal coffin in his sister's sitting room. The coffin rested on two chairs, and a bouquet with a single crimson flower at its center had been placed on Henry's chest. When Twain awoke, he was quite convinced that his brother had died and was lying in the sitting room. He dressed, thought of visiting the corpse, but decided to take a walk first. He left the house and had gone half a block before he realized he had been dreaming. He then returned and told his sister of the dream. A few weeks later, Twain and his brother were together in New Orleans but took different boats back to St. Louis. Henry's passage was on the Pennsylvania, whose boilers exploded not far from Memphis, killing many people. Henry was badly injured and taken, in great pain, to Memphis, where he died a few days later. Although most victims of the accident were buried in wooden coffins, a number of Memphis women, moved by pity for the young man, raised the money to provide a metal coffin. Thus, when Mark Twain came to say his last farewells to his brother, he found the body lying in a metal coffin, just as it had been in his dream. The bouquet, however, was missing, but as Twain stood beside the body, a woman entered the room and placed on Henry's chest a bouquet of white flowers. At its center was a single red rose. That's from the Journal of American Society for Psychical Research, pages 187 and 88, 1970. Okay. Next one we're going to read in the Prophecies section is called No Questions Asked. His child was due to be born in 3 months' time, but Jamie Castell, a Spanish hotel executive, heard a voice in a dream tell him that he would never see it. Castell, convinced that he was going to die soon, took out an insurance policy for more than $100,000, payable only in the event of his death and with no other benefits. A few weeks later, he was driving home from work at a steady 50 miles per hour when a car going in the opposite direction at over 100 miles per hour struck a safety barrier, somersaulted in midair, and landed on top of his own car. Castell and the other driver were instantly killed. The insurance company paid Mrs. Castell without delay, though normally the death of someone who had so recently taken out such a specific policy would have been investigated at length. But this incredible accident rules out any suspicion, a spokesman for the company said. A fraction of a second either way, and he would have escaped. And that's from the Unexplained, Mysteries of Mind, Space, and Time, Volume 1, Issue 6. I guess that would have been a magazine. All right. Well, I'm going to move on. The next section we're going to go to now. So there's a plethora of other articles about prophecies, but what I'm doing is cherry picking ones that I think are good to share. So, but there's loads of other stuff in here. I'm skipping over a lot of great stuff to to get the ones that I'm reading. But this section here is titled Anomalies. Swig here. Mr. 79's hitting the spot. There's a unique musk here to this blend that is really enjoyable. It's almost hard to put your finger on sometimes. That's good though. So this article is titled, in the section Anomalies, titled The Tools of Tiny People. In the last years of the 19th century, hundreds of flint tools were found beneath the moorland peat of East Lancashire's Pennine Hills. By their minute size, they seem to belong not to the province of ancient men, but rather to the world of dwarfs or gnomes. None of the tools found, scrapers, borers, and tiny crescent-shaped knives, was longer than half an inch, and many were smaller than a quarter of an inch. The flaking by which they were shaped and brought to a sharp edge was so fine that in many cases it could only be appreciated through a magnifying glass. That the flints were not bird points used for bird hunting seems evident from the fact that nothing resembling an arrowhead was found among them, and while the scrapers and borers may conceivably have been fitted with wooden handles, they are far too small to be used by ordinary human hands. Two observations suggest that this was not done. No bored or engraved materials were found in conjunction with the flints, and even with handles, the scrapers would have been hopelessly impractical for the task of scraping flesh from animal hides. The same observations apply to the crescent-shaped knives, which were, in any case, clearly not designed to have handles or to be placed in wooden holders. For such reasons, some have guessed that the knives were ritual replicas of the crescent moon. But why, in that case, they should have been found alongside small versions of conventional tools is a mystery, unless those too are supposed to have had a ritual purpose. This is interesting. To label ancient objects of unknown purpose as ritual instruments is, of course, a remedy commonly applied by puzzled archaeologists. If the Lancashire finds had been unique, they would have probably been forgotten, but other examples of tools apparently fashioned by a miniature people were found in England, beneath the floor of a drowned forest in Devon, and in the sandy heathland of Suffolk. And more finds of pygmy flints have been made in other parts of the world, in Egypt, Africa, Australia, France, and Sicily, for example, and in India, where small crescent-shaped knives of flint and agate were found in caves in the Vindhya Hills. Whoever the makers of the pygmy flints were, and whatever their purpose, they seem to have been an established class of artisans, and to have plied their delicate craft from one end of the world to the other. So, we're still in anomalies, but there's a lot of numerous articles in here about living creatures trapped in stone. So I'm going to read one of those. The last of the pterodactyls, flying reptiles with leathery wings and long, toothy beaks, died about 100 million years ago, according to established scientific opinion. But in the experience of a number of startled French workmen, the last one died in the winter of 1856 in a partially completed railway tunnel between the St. Dizier and Nancy lines. In the half-light of the tunnel, something monstrous stumbled toward them out of a great boulder of Jurassic limestone they had just split open. It fluttered its wings, croaked, and died at their feet. The creature, whose wingspan was 10 feet 7 inches, had 4 legs joined by a membrane like a bat. What should have been feet were long talons, and the mouth was arrayed with sharp teeth. The skin was like black leather, thick and oily. At the nearby town of Gray, the creature was immediately identified by a local student of paleontology as a pterodactyl. The rock stratum in which it had been found was consistent with the period when pterodactyls lived, and the limestone boulder that had imprisoned the winged reptile for millions of years was found to contain a cavity in the form of an exact mold of the creature's body. That's from the Illustrated London News, February 9th, 1856, page 166. go one more on anomalies. Workmen quarrying stone near the River Tweed below Rutherford, Scotland in 1844 found a piece of gold thread embedded in the rock 8 feet below ground level. A small piece of the thread was sent to the offices of the local newspaper, the Kelso Chronicle, for the inspection of the curious. That's from the Times of London, June 22nd, 1844. Let's see. We'll go one more on anomalies. Mr. 79 is hitting the spot. Okay. So here we go. A living toad was liberated from a cavity near the center of a large rock by workmen digging for ore at Paswick, Derby, England in 1852. They came upon the rock, actually a large lump of ore, at a depth of 12 feet below ground level, and since it was too large for 2 men to lift, they began to break it up with their picks. The cavity in which they found the toad was nearly 6 inches in diameter, considerably larger than the animal itself, and was lined with crystals, perhaps of carbonate of lime. The toad died very soon after being exposed to air. That's from the Zoologist, 1852. Well, I think that's going to wrap up Mysteries of the Unexplained. I'll go ahead and let y'all know what we're going to be reading about next time. Next time we're going to hit the sections coincidences and then spontaneous human combustions. And spontaneous human combustions actually starts another section that's under the title Unearthly Fates. And that'll be next time. Thank y'all so much for watching. I love this book so much. If you can get your hands on this book, I'd recommend it. It's great. I actually saw another copy of it one time in a thrift store and should have bought it just to have 2 copies. But it's great and I love it so much. In fact, my grandfather was also a pipe smoker, and anytime I read this book, I can still sort of smell a smoky, a lingering smoky smell in this book from just being in his house for so long. But all right, well, thank y'all so much for watching, and we'll get on some more Mysteries Unexplained next time.